Estate Agency X, the UK's #1 estate agency podcast discussing the future of estate agency, entrepreneurship and business with hosts Mark Burgess and Rob Brady.
Hi everybody, on this episode I'm talking to Jamie Curtis from Cooke Curtis Co. Jamie's been in the industry for 32 years, so we dig into what that period was like all the way back from recession where interest rates were 15% to today where he's running a very futuristic estate agency, has won innovation awards from various different companies. What started him off on that journey? He mentions in there that he read my book, The Estate Agency Revolution, so that's always a plus point. And we just try and find out why and how he's managed to create such an incredible estate agency.
So Jamie, welcome to the show.
Hey Rob, how are you doing?
All the way down from Cambridge.
Indeed.
So Jamie, a little bit of, for listeners out there, give us a little bit of background on who Jamie is and where you're from.
So I was born in Cambridge,
quite
some time ago, and lived in Cambridge for a short period of time, and then with the family we moved further away to Leeds and then back down to London, and then returned back to Cambridge as I grew older. Yeah.
And I'm quite right in thinking you've been in agency 32 years, so like 3 decades of...
Since you were 5.
Yeah, so 1992 from memory, GA Property Services, General Accident Property Services. I was selling insurance at the time as a 21-year-old, which isn't really a good thing when you don't know what you're doing selling insurance. And there was a job advert saying basic salary, company car, commission, and I jumped at it. Didn't know I wanted to be an estate agent. And within 6 months, I was running an office, which was ridiculous.
Which actually sounds like most estate agents.
6 months is a long, that's a long training period. Only about 6 hours, I think. Isn't it?
But the other thing is, you also want a 3-month training program to be a valuer. So as a 21, 22-year-old, you're given keys to a car and told to go and value a house where somebody owns a property, and you're supposed to know what you're doing. It took me years.
I remember the first guy that took me out on a valuation was a guy called Mickey Moore, and he just said, "Watch this." And we went into this house, and he just went around banging all these walls, and then gave the guy a cheap price and come out and went, "That's a deal." So that's 6 months. I think is quite a good. It's quite a good training.
My first training session was ripping down boards in the middle of the recession to say, right, this is how estate agency's done. Rip all the other boards out the way, and we put our board back in a prominent position. And that was, I think he's now one of the area managers of Connells. I think still now. So
it sounds like
good practices. So that 6 month period, going back all those years, like what was estate agency like then?
It was a recession. Interest rates were 15%, and General Accident Property Services had a large corporate division, so the majority of our stock, sadly, was repossessions. So that was quite a sad time. As a 21, 22-year-old. Back then, as an estate agent, you had to attend the repossessions. So you were there with the locksmith and the bailiff. And it wasn't particularly nice, because you were meeting families that were having to give their keys in. And then our job was to try and get the best result for them, so the debt wasn't too high. And so the pressure was on you to try and do your best that you could, because you knew someone was going to struggle even more if you couldn't get a good price for it. But it was a really, really challenging period of time. But we did what we could. And General Accident Property Services was like any other corporate company at the time. They were good on training, but then they just left you to it, and there wasn't really any great support. So fairly quickly I got out from there.
What, just out of interest on that point, because that was a bit before I entered the estate agency, the people that were buying back then, were they all cash, or were there still people getting mortgages at 15% and buying houses and taking the risk?
Mortgages.
But people were still
we had in-house mortgage advisor, like all the corporates do now. So we had a couple of guys that sat in the back of the office. So any buyers that came in, no different to what it is now, that you would recommend they come and have a chat with.
Wow.
Andrew was one particular one that he was a good lad and would get mortgages.
Right.
Yeah, even still high percentage mortgages, even though in those difficult times.
Wow.
Mm. And then, so you said you weren't there for a long period of time.
Yeah, I did a few years, but thankfully, I was approached by one of the leading agents in Cambridge at the time to come and work with them, and they were an independent company, and they had a vision of what they wanted to do with the company, and turn it from what it was to being Cambridge's absolute leading company, and they needed someone to support the boss to do that, and that was a great period of time for me.
How long was that for?
Well, I did 15 years in total with the company. Wow. Shall I say the name? It's Cheffins, and they're still a great company now in Cambridge, and got a lot of respect for them. And interestingly, before I started, none of the negotiators or valuers were on a commission, and so they were just paid a salary, given a car. So they put a whole new process in place for me to start to get me motivated and get out there, and the business grew exponentially year on year on year to make it the business that it is today. But I did 5 or 6 years in Cambridge, and I set up a new office in Haverhill for them, and then I went to Saffron Walden and did another 5 or 6 years there. And then time to change, and went to their nearest rival and went to work for them.
And how long was that for?
That was 6 years. So I started with Tucker Gardner, and it was interesting. I was thinking on the way here. I mean, the two companies used to fight for top position, and the way you knew who was winning that was by how many pages that they would take in the paper each week. And the paper was loving it, because you'd get our bosses ringing up saying we'll take 6, and they go, well, the Cheffins have taken 8, so we'll take 10, and it was a swinging competition, really, and they were spending thousands each week. We talk about Rightmove.
People forget how expensive that actually was.
They were spending $100,000 a year on advertising, and we talk about Rightmove, but yes, I did 6 years at Tucker Gardner. And on January the 6th, 2014, my bosses called a meeting and said, we've sold our business to Countrywide. Completely out of the blue. And a lot of respect for John and Simon, who run the business, understood exactly why they wanted to do it. But very quickly, my then business partner, Sam Cooke, and I hatched a plan to be out as soon as we could. A year, a month later, we'd opened Cooke Curtis Co.
That's a lot to unpick. So, firstly, we had Dave, one of the guys from the previous podcast, and he was saying about the difference in working from corporate estate agency going into independent estate agency, and then obviously how they've set up theirs. Obviously, the learnings. He said I would never been able to go from corporate into just setting up my own company. In that transition of probably what you're talking, 21 years. You said 15 years in the one rival to the other, 6 years in the other. What did you take from that you wanted to put into Cooke Curtis Co?
It's a good question. I know both companies were particularly focused on the marketing side. So when I was at Cheffins, we quite quickly, as the internet became a thing, got a website. Bearing in mind, websites weren't really around till late 90s. So we got the website, and then we got Vibra Alto. So we went from having a diary that you wrote all the appointments in, then crossed them out and put new ones in. So we were quite ahead of our time at Cheffins. So technology was quite important from that perspective. And then when I joined Tucker Gardner, there was a real mentality of customer care. Neither companies were targeted, and I took from that quite a lot. And my previous managing director, Simon Gardner, was very focused on client care. And then if you did a good job and you worked hard, the rewards would be there for you as an individual and for the company and for our client. And so the need to say to somebody, you need to book 10 valuations a week, you need to do this many sales, you need to do this many mortgage leads, wasn't there. But the need to deliver on your client care your promises to your client about I'll get the feedback to you, I'll do this, I'll do that. So from the two companies I took marketing and customer care. So when we opened Cooke Curtis Co, we looked very closely at providing the best of both. So from a marketing perspective, the best website that we could do. It sounds silly now, but the quality of the photography when we opened in 2015 was still appalling for 90% of estate agents. Most people still didn't have floor plans, and most people wrote details from the 90s, bedroom one, measurement, radiator, PowerPoint, etc., not trying to portray the property to who the buyer might be, just thinking a bit more outside of the box. And so those are the things that we brought to Cooke Curtis Co, quality, care, and in the first year we won the Innovation Award, which was an award in Cambridge that they saw that we had innovated and moved a state agency forward quite rapidly.
That's interesting as well, because you must have a innovative mindset anyway, because of even just simple things like you mentioned about the property details. And when you think about the property details, it's just a throwback to when you couldn't have photos. So you had to describe it to the detail. I had to say, coving to ceiling. Yeah? But I don't need to say that when I have 100 photos online or whatever. Even if I've got 10 photos, I don't need to say that. But you forget that it came from a place whereby details were one photo, Pritt-sticked onto a piece of paper, photocopied in black and white.
Absolutely. One of my jobs as a young estate agent was, you had a camera with film, obviously, because this is the early 90s, and you took a picture, you took 10 pictures, you don't know if they're in focus or not. There was a guy who ran a photo development shop on Regent Street where all the agents were, who absolutely made a packet out of us. You'd go there, do the hour, check the photos are okay. Most of them weren't. You still used it. You made an original copy and then photocopied 30 sets of details in black and white.
Absolutely.
And you couldn't see a thing.
And, I mean, an hour was like the fast service.
Yeah.
Imagine now. So like one of my children going somewhere and they'd be like, yeah, we'll get it for you in an hour. They'd be like, what? An hour? So with that mindset then, what else have you looked at and gone, but it just works that because it used to have to be like this. There must be other things in your business if you're that way inclined, whereby as you've taken that step, you've come out of these background of these two companies that one's not targeted, it believes in customer service, one's heavy on marketing, and you've got that experience, and then you've suddenly found yourself in a situation where you're holding the reins now, and you've looked and gone, we don't need to describe the property in so much detail. We've got photographs and floor plans. We can use the description for something better.
Yeah.
What other sort of things have you found like that perhaps, a traditional estate agent would say, it's not broke, don't fix it, I'll just do it how it's always been done, but it doesn't need to work like that anymore?
Yeah, I mean, but before we sort of met with you and looked at life cycle, we'd used other forms of databases that enabled us to communicate with people. And
what were you trying to achieve?
In the regular communication, to build up an audience that would enable us to ensure that we were in that potential client's mind when the time come to sell. I can't remember the company we used, but we were ensuring that all of our contacts were going on there. I mean, it was nothing like what we have now.
Maybe like a brief your market or something like
that's
that.
It. Yeah, thank you. So, and it was great. I met the guy X years ago, showed us what it could do, and let's get all our contacts on there. But like anything, it was down to how much I wrote to get on there. So it was a challenge.
Became another department, really.
Yeah, exactly. But it worked really well. So we were engaging with people. They were reading it. You could see who was looking at it and reach out to those people. So the regularity in that communication enabled us to start building up an audience of people that were contacting us over time. And so that was something that was outside of the box in terms of agency, because up until then, you would engage with a client. So I'm going to sell Rob's house. Going to sell it to Mark. Transaction's done. Yeah. How am I going to keep in touch with these people? And that's what Brief Your Market showed us that we could do. Anniversary holidays, get the new valuation, updated market appraisals. Has your mortgage come to an end of its 3-year period? And so that we were starting to do things then, but only really hitting the tip of the iceberg. But it was good, yeah.
Okay, so then as you started to get further and further into that, we're looking back at it now, why would you consider that only to be the tip of the iceberg? Because a lot of people might be listening to that thinking that sounds fantastic, right? That would still be a massive step on from where they are. So what was then the learning after that? What sort of put you off of that and onto something else?
Your book to start with, if we did Brief Your Market, we opened in 2015, so we just did what we did for probably 2 or 3 years without looking at trying to build up a database external from our CRM. So we did that for a couple of years, and then when did your book come out? Was it 1920?
I've got 2. So I brought one out in 2015, I think, and then one into 2019, 2020.
So 2019, 2020. So I think I must have been in a funnel somewhere, because kept ignoring it, and then I thought, I'm going to buy this book, and I kind of got the bigger picture about how it absolutely essential was. So I kind of got the idea with Brief Your Market, but then it took it to another level, where if we created even better content and had the tools to engage with people, but also understand what they were opening and reading, and then retarget those people even better. And then COVID came along, and so we didn't do anything. I think we might have spoken on the phone or whatever. But then COVID came along in March 2020, and I think it took us another year to think to get the rest of the directors to say that this is something we all should be doing, and let's engage. But I think what Life Cycle was offering wasn't just that regular communication. It was the package of, it's going to be a CRM, it's going to be your nurture journeys, and then eventually so much more.
But there must be, it must have been a challenge, because you say you read the book, and felt like you got it, but there's other directors, there's other staff members, there's you've still got a massive percentage of the industry that are stuck on the idea of writing details, because once upon a time you couldn't put photos on, and you're talking to people about shifting to this utopia of so that must have been a bit of a challenge. And not so much how did you talk them round, but what just made it like, well, probably should do this? I mean, it sounds like you had a pretty successful business going already. It wasn't like you was scrapping around trying to find the solution.
Quite a sizable team as well.
Yeah. So in 2020, when we were into COVID, we had more people than we got now. We had 11 in our sales team. Actually, about to say we had a smaller lettings team, so we had about 11 in the sales team and 7 or 8 in lettings. So
sort of why bother, if you like, you know what I mean? Like, why not just carry on with what we're doing?
I think to ignore the future and what you can do with that technology would have meant we'd have gone backwards. Somebody else would have picked up on it. Somebody else would have realised there is so much more to be done here, and we would have, if we'd have continued just being good at what we do, we wouldn't evolve to where we are now, and continue to evolve and grow. Don't get me wrong; it didn't work for us to start with.
No,
you and I remember the conversations. We met you at your club, and we went into switching everything from Dupix to Life Cycle,
And
summer
back
of 21, and our world imploded.
Yeah.
And that was as much to do with us as it was to do with things not being quite right for us from a Life Cycle's perspective, or assuming it would work. And we took a step back for a few months, and it evolved. The CRM side evolved quite quickly. And so for the first bit was quite challenging, because I was convincing a team to do something that they were struggling to do. But once I was confident that your update had enabled us to do it better, in terms of managing diaries and dealing with offers and et cetera, that it wasn't too difficult to convince the team this is the way we're going to do it. And I think one of the things you've mentioned a number of times is you're not working harder, you're just doing you're doing it differently.
Yeah.
And it was well received the second time round.
Yeah.
And it worked.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess, that sort of analogy of you're not working harder, you're just doing it differently, it does seem harder in the beginning because you're yet to let go of
the old system,
the old things.
Yeah.
So you are working harder in the sense that, yeah, I know, but I am still doing that stuff. And then gradually, I guess, you start to go, do I really need to double check that thing? I know it's kind of working now.
Yeah.
It is chasing for viewing feedback. Do I need to also do it? Like gradually you get to the stage where...
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we've always talked about and you talk about as a company is trying to make sure that tasks that can be automated are automated well to free up time to have the meaningful conversations. And so do I need to have my negotiators ringing 4 times, sending 3 emails to somebody that doesn't want to talk to you or doesn't want to reply? So no, let the system do that bit. We still do make 1 phone call. Of course. And if they're not responding to the automation and the phone call, they don't want to talk to us. And so a lot of time is saved so that we can spend more time on the phone when they're registering, more time saying, okay, you've looked at this house, look at this house, and having those engaging conversations and creating more valuations. And I've sent you ideas of what my utopia is, and you've got yours collectively. And I can see that every few months there are new updates that are making our lives less complicated and more straightforward in a communication perspective, and it will enable us to do even more business.
Yeah.
We had a record month last month, and it's all over our blogs. As a company, we like to do 25, 30 sales a month. We sold 50 in February.
Wow.
And there's a number of things that are behind that, but the staff are one thing because they are fantastic. The marketing that we do with our design team, but a lot of that goes down. And I look back to when we turned on our journeys in December 22, January 23, where we just started actually communicating with our potential clients properly. Rob helped set up the journeys. We wrote the content, and there is an obvious point now that we are gaining more and more traction.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What was quite on the journey that we came across, I remember you, from a leader's perspective, what I loved about, there was something that happened to you just before that happening. And I remember you missed one of our podcasts earlier, and you messaged me and said, I need to sort some stuff out of the teams. I need to get things in place, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah.
And then you came back to us with this whole fresh approach to, right, now it's on. And there was almost like a 6-month period where you were doing whatever you needed to do not that your company was broken, but there was something you did, and then you came back to me and was like, right. And since then, you've been on it. And what was that? If you can
new member of staff, it's having the right people in the right places is incredibly important. You know, I know it is within your company, and everyone pulls in the same direction. We got great teams, but what I was trying to do was spin too many plates, and try to talk to you, try to create useful content, and be an estate agent, grow the business, be a husband, a wife, a husband, a father, and I couldn't do it all, and so something had to give, and there was a guy, Mark, who is his year anniversary in a few weeks, and we tried to get him a number of years. I gave him his first job as an estate agent 10 years ago, so I've always liked Mark, and him joining and then running the sales office has released so much of my time to do the things that help grow the business. And for me, with the numbers of people we've got and the business we want to do and how many clients we want to look after and ensure we look after them correctly, I just struggle to do the things that communicate with you and write the content and get things in place. So that was the turning point for me that changed the amount of time I had to do things and be creative, and then have a vision and join your core program and know that I could commit to that and continue to grow the business.
It's thinking about it's like strategic thinking is a bit.
Yeah,
there's so many business owners don't have the time, but even when they do have the time, you're still thinking about other things. So having that person, Mark, sat in that seat, dealing with the day-to-day bits and pieces, it's very hard. I see a lot of owners, it's hard to switch off. Go, right, I've got an hour of your time, Rob, but half the time they're thinking about after this, I've got this, and this, and this, and this. Yeah, so they're like, and so you never see them 2 feet in. It's always like, it's almost like when you meet someone who's busy on a street and they've got an appointment to go to, but they like to chat to you, but at the same time,
but they're thinking,
they're going. So it's a strong point because we speak to a lot of people, and Mark talks about it all the time. And the first session we've done in that alignment session on the course thing about right positions, right seats, right people, is so fundamental. So it's a good recognition of leadership, Jamie, on your part.
Thank you. And it took a long time to find the right person, and we knew when Mark joined, it would release some of my stress and free up time, and everything that we wanted to happen has done and happened, and also continue to grow the business in the direction and elevate our numbers and look after more clients than ever.
What I'm interested in with him as well is, you said you gave him his first job in a estate agency 10 years ago. That was for when you was at Tucker Gardner?
Yep.
So did he come straight out of Tucker Gardner to you guys?
No. He went to another great independent company, Bush & Co.
Okay. Yep. So he was still in an estate agency?
Yeah.
But the way that you'd set up your estate agency by the time he come to work for you, very different, I'm guessing, to those others, life cycle for a start and all the other things that you've spoken about. Was it hard to get him to buy into that idea? Or did he not, he's got 10 years experience now, did he not sort of go, well, I don't do it that way?
No, he absolutely loves it. Mark is, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, married to another member of staff in our office that's worked with us since June 2016. So Jenny, we offered her a job on the day of the Brexit vote, where we voted out of Brexit, and so she's been with us for years, and she's wonderful. And they met, and so he was already aware of what life cycle was happening because of conversation.
So basically, she was coming home talking absolute gibberish. He was thinking, what the hell are you talking about?
Saying we're doing this thing. So he was aware of it, but no, he's embraced it. He's a lot younger than me. And so I think for younger people, technology
they just get it,
is quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's interesting. So one of the things there that you mentioned, which I think is absolutely critical for most businesses, not just estate agency, is that delegation that you're talking about. I mean, obviously cash flow has to allow for it, but in the early days, it's like, you jump into a business and you do everything, and then you employ people who become your kind of hands. I used to do it this way, so that's how I want you to do it, and you do that bit, and you do. Basically, those people just keep coming back to you if there's anything different to what you told them when they joined, and you still become overloaded. And then one day, your business reaches a stage whereby you should be able to just step up onto, say, the top deck of the boat and steer. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to know what's going on with coaching. It's your problem.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to know what's going on with valuations. It's your problem.
Yeah.
You know, I was saying this to another agent a little while ago. He was talking to me about some struggles he was having with some of his staff, and I said, well, who does the valuations? He's like, well, you know, this guy does them and I do some, and I'm not sure he can do them as well as I can. I'm like, it's his problem. Mm. He does the valuations. That's his job. Mm. You're supposed to be on top of the deck steering the ship. Where's the company going? And if he can't do that, he can't do the job.
He's not right for the job. Yeah, and it was interesting when we had our meeting with Julia on the EOS platform, and there was a particular point about what you're going to do for the next quarter or next year. Whose responsibility is that? And I've got no question about the people being in the right seats in our office. And so whether it's Mark being the office manager, associate director in charge of the office, who then has people under him that do valuations, absolutely trust those people. They've learned from us, but then brought their own.
And that's the key, isn't it?
You know,
to go like, you can adjust this if you want to. It's no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm here for you if you need me.
And it's the same with viewings. You know, you're telling grandmas to suck eggs, but turn up early, don't park on the drive, get the doors open, turn the lights on if you need to, meet and greet on the doorstep. And there's so many estate agents that still don't do that right. You see them parking on the drive, or they're having a fag around the corner, or something. And what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, it's
absolutely.
So obvious.
So do you think that the technology that you've got has enabled you to be able to employ people to do more meaningful roles then? Because, you know, before that, you are needing a large amount of staff just to trawl through stuff to try and find some gold somewhere, really, aren't you?
And we got some big numbers. And you know, as a company that lists X amount and sells X amount of properties a month, you know, we've got 400 new applicants that have registered this month alone, and
yeah, that's a big manual process. As
of Friday night, I often check how many viewings are booked on the system. We had over 200 on the system, so then you know that come Monday you're going to have quite a lot of feedback to do, and so I'm fairly confident with the number of people that we've got now. If we wouldn't manage the process, we wouldn't be able to communicate and deliver on what we're doing in terms of feedback to clients, offers to clients, creating new opportunities, if we were still on Dupix.
No. Well, it certainly wouldn't have the consistency, would it?
No.
You wouldn't know for certain that everybody's going to get something asking for feedback the next day, or that someone's going to, you know, definitely receive these, or definitely receive that sort of stuff that you can only do with automation.
And that's only talking about the viewing side of things, and applicant registration and the searching. The other thing is obviously the nurture journeys and the applicants registering with the property to sell. The rocks, if people need to know about the rocks and creating valuation opportunities. We don't typically use the viewing side because we've got so many anyway. But
so for somebody who's that you're talking in Japanese to them, how is that working then? Like in their mind, if you're saying you get 400 registrations a month, that means you have to physically speak to 400 people. But you're saying that the computer will register those people for you. Yeah.
So the majority of applicants are self-registered.
And then how will that work with your journeys? What are the journeys based on, and you know?
Yeah. So if you think about a percentage of our applicants will phone us, so that's another thing. So we'll register. But if you look at the digital side, whether somebody's looked on our website or Rightmove or wherever they've come from, the leads come in, and then if they haven't qualified themselves, it sends out a reminder, you know, to book a viewing. You need to get yourself registered. So we come into a lot of qualified viewing requests.
Where they'll have told you their financial
Where they've told us
circumstances
everything.
and
Where they want to be. They've set up a search profile. They've told us what price range. They've told us what their position is. So they need to sell a property, and we know where it is. And are they buying with a mortgage or cash? That enables then the negotiator to then pick up the phone and say, "Hi Rob, you want to look at 22 Acacia Avenue? Great, I've got all your details here. See you're in a position to buy. Let's get you in straight away." Alternatively, the conversation, "Hi Rob, see you want to look at 22 Acacia Avenue. This one's been really popular. We've booked 20 viewings on it this week, and you're not on the market. We need to get you on the market. Can we arrange evaluation straight away?" So it enables that conversation.
Much easier, yeah.
And then if, for whatever reason, they're not ready for evaluation, it's still early on their purchase journey and they're just dipping their toes in the water, then they'll enter the system. And so the system enables us to send contact. So Rob then gets an email from us a week later saying, "Hi Rob, this is how we sell properties." And he'll get another email 2 weeks later.
Bit of a
Rob.
slower burn.
Yeah. So we do week 1, week 3, week 6, week 8. And so over 3 months, they'll just get a drip feed of information.
And then if they're interacting with that in some way, it's bringing it back to the forefront.
It pops up. And that's not just for applicants registration. We do valuation leads, instant val leads. So I think like a lot of your agents, we advertise significantly digitally on Google and Facebook and Instagram and create these instant val leads and come into the system. And as we all know, a large number of those people are on the early early part of their journey. But again, the good thing about this is that they'll get that contact over a number of months, and often they're turned into a socially distanced valuation lead, which you all know about, and then converted into a full valuation.
Brilliant. So I've always seen life cycle as really specifically a software almost predominantly for the sales really, because we don't get involved in property management and all of that sort of stuff. But I think that's a bit of a mindset shift for people because they're used to a CRM that does a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
bit of property management, bit of sales, bit of ends. But I sort of feel like that's fine when you start a company, but as the company grows, you're going to need to specialise. You're going to need, if you want to run a lot of rental payments, you're probably going to need an automated payment platform. If you're going to do a lot of property maintenance, you're probably going to need a property maintenance tool of some sort where people can report problems. And there doesn't ever really seem to be anything for sales, and that's why really we built Lifecycle, because it is designed to grow and scale a sales team with automations and things that make life easier. So it sounds like that's working in that regard. And can you see why a normal estate agent might struggle with that concept and think, no, my software's supposed to have a little bit of everything inside it? Dupix had a bit of every department, I guess.
Yeah, I think, in an ideal world, you would have something as wonderful for lettings as sales, and we'd all be under one roof. But that's a world that we don't live in. I think if we'd have stayed with a platform that is Dupix or any other, insert another name of another provider, we wouldn't be where we are today, and that's without any shadow of a doubt. And I think the important thing is we've understood that we had to split, and so our lettings team still use Dupix because they have a great property management system, and it works incredibly well. And when you're dealing with that many tenancies and payments and et cetera, it's incredibly important to get that right.
Definitely.
And so from our perspective, splitting the team was essential.
Yeah.
Wasn't worrying in any way. If you said to us in a year's time we've created something better, then
of course,
then we're on board. But
breaking those two teams apart has only been beneficial.
The lettings and sales are such different beasts anyway. It didn't matter that we weren't all under one piece of software.
Yeah.
And they run different diaries, different methods of doing things.
Again, though, do you think that comes down to cash flow? Do you think that, like in the early days, there's not enough people, there's not enough money to split the software, split the teams, that sort of stuff? Do you think that that's a point that you reach in a company where you go, okay, this makes sense now because basically I already have two teams. The fact they work in the same software is. There's some conveniences to it. It's kind of irrelevant because they're doing something completely different to these guys anyway.
Yeah, but also other companies do it per license user, so it doesn't actually cost us a great deal more to. So you've got Dupix with X licenses for the lettings team, and what we pay you for the sales team. Yeah. If we were all on Dupix,
similar thing.
It'd be a similar cost.
Yeah, I was just thinking more from a mindset point of view of somebody feeling like, but they're gonna break apart. It's like, but they're already broken apart.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. Rob?
You touched on it about Google Ads.
Yeah.
And so, like, obviously, I've worked with you for a couple of years now. So, and you've had quite good success now because I know you've spoken to, I think it's Pete, didn't you? Before.
Yeah.
Before that, did you do Google Ads? And obviously getting involved within doing the instant valuations and generating marketing qualified leads into a platform, like you said before, you wanted to reach a new set of audiences of people to get to know you, get to trust you. Like, how has that evolved in the last few years? Because it's probably 2 years now.
Yeah, so it's again, if you can tick off the things that have enabled us to get to where we are today, calling Google Pete and Facebook Paul. So, and again, I only found those through the Lifecycle community group. Hearing it's such an active group, and sometimes it's too active. You try to keep up with the messages. I don't know how they will do it, but you cherry pick and you read your message today and you take a bit of content and go, okay, I'm going to now contact that person, understand what that's about, or I'll communicate directly with one of the Lifecycle community and ask them why that worked. Because we recently doing a WhatsApp thing with Stitch AI because reached out to Steve Beercock and etc. But Google Pete and Facebook Paul I found via the community group, and it was just a light bulb moment that whether people actually clicked on the link or not, more and more people were seeing our brand. And so these adverts that are going out either via Google, Facebook or Instagram, the audience or the reach of tens of thousands per month. We could never have done that before. Whether someone's just on Google and our ad pops up, or YouTube, or Facebook and Instagram, the repeated. There is Cooke Curtis Co. There is Cooke Curtis Co.
Share of voices going up and up.
Exactly.
And up.
So we get a really good level of instant val leads anyway. Can't remember the number, but we're talking a big number each month. But it's that greater, wider audience as well that this Cambridge and 10 mile radius of people that are seeing our name and our logo pop up time and time again.
It's crazy, really, isn't it? Because when you have that, when you experience that, and then you look back and you wonder how it is so hard for all of us to come to the conclusion that everything in business is downstream of lead generation and nurturing.
Yeah,
everything. but most companies don't have that set up. They might think that they do in some way. I may have thought that I did once upon a time. You may have thought that you did once upon a time by, I don't know, running 6 pages in the newspaper is our lead generation,
or delivering X thousand
whatever it might be.
Yeah,
but it's not the same as what we're talking about. You know, you're talking, like you say, tens of thousands of people that turn into thousands that fill out forms, that turn into hundreds that read content, that turn into predictably X amount of listings again and again, and then you switch it on autopilot.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also the power of these systems where they can retarget warm audiences. So somebody that's engaged with us somehow via Facebook via our website, then
And they're going to see even
they're
more
going to
stuff.
get it. They're going to get it again, and it's
Like selling books to people, right?
yeah, exactly. I was in that funnel, and I like ignore. Okay, I'm going to buy this thing.
I think I remember on the first school, you was like, I don't know, it
just keeps coming up.
Just happened to pop up at the right time. I was like, that is amazing.
I remember as a client, I said to you before, even when before as a client at Weisberg, I was like, you're everywhere, Mark. Mark's stalking me. You're like, popped up everywhere.
Yeah, it's like, even now, Hayley sometimes says to me, like, oh, have you seen this? It's everywhere at the moment. I was like, it's everywhere for you.
Yeah. Have you been searching expensive watches again?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. Okay, we always finish off with a question about the future of a state agency, because that's the concept of the podcast. For many people, what you do already is the miles into the future for them. But where do you see the pieces maybe connecting of, I don't know, some of the bits that you're experiencing now with life cycle, or even outside of that, AI, whatever it might be? Is there any sort of particular place that you think we're going in the next few years with this?
Yeah, I mean, we've not touched on AI, and it's in life cycle now, and I think it's going to evolve and do more and more. And I think for me, it's how it can do more for us as an industry and as a company, and whether it's predicting your income in a year's time. I think we talk things that I quite like to be able to do is. And I think some people do it with the numbers. Like, okay, if I register this many people, book that many valuations, sell that many properties, and your system already knows your conversion rate, it knows your average prices, and then you can predict 6 to 12 months ahead what your income's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen.
Take into account inflation, take into account
Exactly.
like wage prices and
you
employment.
can budget better. You can then start looking at recruitment. You can start looking at growth. So I think AI, and there are many other things it can do that's going to reduce those tasks that something digital could do better anyway. Whether it's finding a spot in the diary to book a viewing because you're there already, rather than someone on the phone going, yeah, I think we're there. And it's just going to evolve, I think, in a way that is going to improve our efficiency and improve our time for those conversations, so you can be a better estate agent to the seller and buyer.
Do the human bit better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't be afraid of it. It's not going to take. And in fact, one of the negotiators said the other day when the offers were coming in, "Oh, that's my job gone, isn't it?" No, that bit is automated to make your job easier, so that you can have more time, so you can spend on the phone or more time on viewing. So extend your viewing time, extend the time where you're looking for opportunities. And they go, yeah, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah, it's the switch from outcomes, from output to outcomes.
Yeah.
I used to take all the offers. Like, yeah, that was just output.
Yeah.
Now just concentrate on the outcomes.
Yeah.
And like, I don't mind if you look like you're doing less. We get better outcomes. Everybody wins.
Everyone wins. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Thanks very much for coming in.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.